All right, thank you everybody for joining today's session on how to implement a secure and seamless remote work strategy. Today's session will mainly revolve around Webair and IMSCAD, who we'll go into in just a brief moment. Today's session will be really mainly around virtual desktop infrastructure and how to ensure that your team can work remotely securely. So today, my name is Michael Ohayon, president of Webair. We're a managed cloud company specializing in offsite backups and cloud solutions. With me, I have Adam Jull, our partner in VDI. So a little background of Webair. Webair was founded in the early 90s. Traditionally, we started as a web hosting provider. As time has gone on, we've evolved and grown up that stack over 2 decades. Really today, which we are focused on managed cloud, IT infrastructure. That goes everywhere from firewalls all the way down to the network to the switches. We're taking full ownership and accountability for our customers' cloud environments. Along with doing that, we also provide backups and disaster recovery solutions. With me, I have Adam Jull. Adam, please take the opportunity to introduce yourself as well as IMS.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Great to be with you today. And nice to be with you, whoever's listening in. And what I'd like to just start off by saying is IMSCAD, we've been going, I say, 8+ years, basically came out of the graphical virtualization space, so effectively working with NVIDIA graphics cards, which I'm sure many of you have sort of heard about or either use or have been had in workstations in the past. But effectively, we specialize in that. But obviously, our business has grown to a point where many customers come to us now with requirements. And obviously, we're based in the UK. We have a 24/7 global support team, manage customers all over the world. I'd say 60% of our business is in the US, but because it's the biggest market, but effectively specialized in VMware and Citrix primarily to deliver these types of solutions from on-prem to cloud. And for us, it's all about understanding the workflows, applications, because no one company is the same and everyone uses different tools for their work. And performance to the end user is ultimately the key. And that's really what we're about. But thanks, Michael.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. So everybody on the webinar today, we're going to take a little bit different of an approach. We understand that there is probably some jet lag when it comes to webinars at this point. We've all been remote for well over a year. So Adam and I are more going to be conversational. So there will be slides that you can view and see, but we'll bounce off of one another and hopefully make this more of an open communication kind of panel rather than just your traditional webinar where you look and listen to us and probably get exhausted. So we completely understand this is probably one more webinar that everybody has been taking day after day. So Adam, really to go into it, take everything out of the mix of what VDI is. What happened this year, revolving COVID? Obviously, we know according to Forbes, 159% increase in remote work. Why is VDI becoming more predominant than it's ever been before?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. I mean, obviously, putting COVID to one side for a minute, then when we started the business way back, nearly 9 years ago, VDI was already there, in a lot of cases, particularly with VMware and Citrix. But obviously, in those days, people always looked at it as a bit of a sort of nice to have rather than an essential tool. And obviously people still generally worked off laptops or PCs in the office. So obviously as time has progressed and technology has improved and internet has improved, you've got now a very vibrant, I would say, market with plenty of options out there. And sometimes I think for a customer it can be quite a difficult minefield to sort of navigate to get the best solution. Because if you think of it this way, I always say this to many people. I did something this morning with VMware, and what people really want is the best performance. And I think when everyone went home when the lockdown happened, I think most companies survived no problem, pretty well. They sort of coped, and it sort of accelerated the whole move to hosted desktops or cloud. By probably 5 years at least, I'd say, and made something like a VDI, now a really useful, essential tool, because ultimately, you don't want to you want to control your data, you want security, you want all that kind of performance, centralized. And obviously for us, I think, particularly like over in Europe as well, we had a big lockdown as well as you guys. And, it actually ended up meaning that people are running off VPNs, and it was a bit of a scramble around. Of course, if you're doing anything other than normal, let's say Windows apps or web surfing, you've got any sort of data heavy applications, then you're going to have a problem over a period of time. So I think basically what the upshot is that this whole thing, how terrible it's been, has accelerated the companies. And I think the companies that don't adopt this sort of thing, as part of their kind of standard thing, I think will find it hard to attract the right sort of talent when it goes forward in the marketplace, because I think it's really important to give people the best tools you can give them to do their jobs the most effectively.
Excellent. And talking about kind of data security, Adam, what is some of the main values of a VDI solution? Why do people really go down that rabbit hole of redeploying their kind of status quo of normally an employee comes in, they get a laptop, and now they're getting a laptop, but there's nothing on it, right? You have to remote into this virtual environment. What are like the true advantages? Why should somebody go down this route from a data protection perspective and or alike?
Well, I mean, again, everyone's different, right? And I think everyone has their own reasons to do what they want to do. I mean, I think as things progress, it's like certainly in the next sort of 24 months, 36 months, I don't know why an organization want to be managing desktops, really. It's time consuming, it's dealing with users quite a lot, and IT don't like dealing with you. Well, vice versa, I think users don't like dealing with IT all the time. And I think that's a key part, but also, so it's the overall management of the infrastructure. It's so much more quicker and easy to manage in a dispersed kind of data dispersed sort of Windows 10 environment where people have got data on their local devices. And I think actually, just by centralizing data in one place in the data center, whatever way you look at it, it's the right way to go, and for a number of reasons: IP security, endpoint security, everything. Right through, and ultimately, I think many IT people know this. They know the benefits of it. It's just whether it fits for their business now or in 6 months or a year. But most people have some sort of setup. I think that's fair to say. But could it be better? Could it be improved? And could it be run a bit more efficiently?
Right. So while that's said, I do want to just touch on some key points of why IMSCAD and Webair has partnered. Also mentioned, by the way, to our attendees, feel free to post any questions in the bottom of the webinar field. We will answer those at the end, kind of an open Q&A. But that said, remote work is going to become more predominant. Webair as an organization has decided, even post-COVID, we will stay remote for the most part, with the exception of our data center team members who have to be in the physical locations. We will be a remote organization, and we've seen an uptick in excitement from our team. They have a little bit less of a commute. Going from your bedroom to your next door is definitely much different than sitting on the highway for an hour. So by 2025, it's estimated that 70% of the workforce will be working remotely at least 5 days a month. Now, that's not too crazy. So maybe companies are going to allow their employees to work from home 1 day a month. I personally think there's going to be more. I think a lot of the top talent who has been working for, you look at these big, I like to call them behemoths of organizations, the Amazons, the Googles. They've been working remote for a year almost for a majority of their employees, and they're doing well. They're growing exponentially. Their employee satisfaction has gone up. I think it's like 15-something%, which is really crazy to see in just a year. So according to Gartner CFO survey, 74% plan to permanently shift employees to remote work after COVID-19, and Webair is part of that statistic. We've seen an improvement in our staff. We've seen excitement. So it just makes sense. And being a tech company, you realize you can do these things without having to be in a physical location. We're having these webinars, we have Zooms with our team, we can get together virtually. There's definitely a lack of that human interaction but overall, the work life has been much different. 36.2 million Americans will be fully remote by 2025, which is an increase of 16.8 million compared to pre-pandemic. That's doubling. You know, it's really interesting to see what's happening in the world and why VDI, in our opinion, is going to be the wave of the future. And then you also have things coming out such as SASE and SD-WAN and all these tools, because you have to bring everybody that's virtually remote together in some way, shape, or form for security, data, connectivity, you name it. It's just what's going to happen. So virtual desktop, frequently asked questions. You know, Adam briefly went into what is VDI. You know, it's this remote work environment where you have a physical device, you're still using your physical computer, but when you have a virtual environment, think about the value of working from anywhere with any device. Now your IT departments don't need to worry about provisioning a new laptop and installing applications or anything of that nature. If that laptop fails, you simply send the employee a new laptop. They then log into the virtual remote desktop, whether they're using a client on the computer, whether they're just going HTML5, VMware Horizon, Citrix all support this now, where you can log in through a browser. You can even log in through an iPad, Surface tablet, you name it. So let's say you forgot your laptop at home and you traveled upstate somewhere. You can go to the coffee shop that has laptops or computers for you to use and log into your desktop, and everything will look and feel just like it did yesterday, and you're on a completely different device. Thinking about the management, if you're an IT team, how to push updates to your team now. You don't need to have somebody come and say, here's my laptop, can you install Microsoft Office for me or anything like that. If they need any applications, you simply deploy it virtually on a digital device right through VMware or Citrix or whatever you choose to use. And now that employee will have Office or whatever application they need. You need to install bookmarks. You can make what we call golden images, and now everybody, when they log in the next day, they'll now have bookmarks in Safari or whatever application they're using. It's really, from a management standpoint, virtual desktop infrastructure is the wave of the future. Adam, would you mind going into some of the two-factor values? You know, instead of just, obviously it's scary, right? You have this URL, let's call it, you know, login.webair.com, and that's not a true URL, by the way. But let's just say it was login.webair.com for your employees to go and access their desktop. That doesn't sound too secure to me. What about two-factor? How does that all work?
Well, I think it gets back to a whole bigger point around your end user, you know, having the most smooth and you know, performing experience. So effectively, you know, this is all about, you know, people, like, for example, you know, instead of saying, you know, oh, here's your laptop, you know, here's your phone, when someone joins a firm, you know, you say, well, what do you want? What phone do you want? What laptop? It doesn't matter whether it's an Apple or a Windows device. You know, it doesn't make any difference with this sort of solution. So, you know, you can give people choice, the end user choice to, you know, have what they want when they want it. And obviously that's really important. Of course, when you're logging in, you know, it's got to be quick, it's got to be smooth, it's got to be, you know, and I think there's a few tools out there now with, you know, single sign-on, etc. You know, so you get through the whole kind of Windows log-on as well as the virtual, you know, VDI log-on, to make life a bit smoother. But really, it all falls back to giving that end user the quickest, simplest way in. Because really, users don't care what it is. I mean, we care what it is. We'll talk about it with customers in detail, and we'll explain what it's got in it and what the server's doing and everything else in the network. But, you know, the user doesn't care. You know, he just wants it to work well and not worry about it and make sure there's no problems with it, because they'd rather not ring the IT department up, right? So, and this is really what we're here to achieve.
Excellent, great. So, you know, just to harp on that, it's the VDI environment can really integrate with any of your 2FA implementations today. Duo, Microsoft, Google Authenticator, you name any of the big ones out there, it can integrate. So somebody goes to log in with their Active Directory credentials, immediately it will push a 2FA to their device, or however you're implementing your strategy today, and then they'll be able to access the environment. So does VDI make sense for my company? I can't see or think of any reasons why it wouldn't. It's definitely, it's not a cheap service. It's not where if you have a couple employees, it's probably going to make sense. There's other solutions than a full VDI implementation. But remember, VDI is kind of a broad term that encompasses a lot of different technology. Desktop as a service, whether it's AWS or Azure. VDI also could be dedicated infrastructure, it could be shared infrastructure. Adam, where would you say it might not make sense? And I'm sure that's pretty limited, but I'm sure for probably almost every organization, VDI should probably be part of their strategy at some point.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And as I say, I think we get a bit hooked up maybe on the term VDI. I mean, obviously it's the buzz name of this type of thing, but obviously, effectively what you've got is you've got three options. You've got an on-premise types VDI or hosted desktop where you effectively buy kit. You have the public cloud, which is our friends at Microsoft Azure and AWS and Google, which will offer instances and various infrastructure around that to run desktops. And you have what we're obviously talking about, which is private cloud, where Webair will provide the infrastructure, IMSCAD will provide the service, the delivery and service, and which really, to my mind and my belief, is the most customizable. Let's say. So obviously, all the other ones do the same thing. I mean, the on-premise would do the same thing, but obviously a lot of people don't want this, as I say, don't want to manage the desktop infrastructure. So by giving it to us, you get the full sort of service, and then obviously the actual solution itself is built to specification for your business, and that's really important to say because as I say, one size does not fit all in this space, and everyone's got different apps and workflows and what have you, and they'll have 10 users doing something else over there and 50 users doing something else over there, and they all need different profiles, etc., etc. So it's all about that kind of mix and match and delivering a solution that really fits your enterprise.
Right. So if I work with a provider, how much time will it take to deploy this system, and will it be a burden to my team? Webair Partners, specifically with IMS for this reason, get to the implementation extremely quickly, kind of give you an idea on how it works. Adam mentioned there's a couple different versions: on-prem, public cloud, and also more traditional data center hosting, which is where Webair comes into play. How we partner with IMS is Webair is the responsible party for the infrastructure. So we deploy the VMware environment, the switches, the network, everything under the sun, and we're responsible for monitoring, patching, remediating anything with the VMware environment. So if the storage breaks or anything, we take care of it. You have nothing to worry about. IMS comes in to really be that partner to manage and oversee the VDI environment. They implement everything from the 2FA strategy, integrating with your Active Directory environment, and so on and so forth. And Adam, I'd love to give you the opportunity, kind of what ownership you take in that environment so the customer doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously it's a pretty key part of anyone's business, right? Your desktops, and they've got to be on all the time and working well. And this is the beauty of this type of private cloud, is that it is always on. It's a one price basically per month for the environment. And then obviously what we do, we're basically we consult, we deploy, we support. So effectively with our 700 plus deployments we've done already, we look after those customers 24/7 if required, and we have a 1 hour fix on everything pretty much, and generally the customers we've already worked with Webair, that has been proven out, and we've got a solid sort of system and process in place. And I think, as I say, the initial sort of discussions with an end user business is really important, and that's the bit we would do to help you really get the right, or get on the right track to the right path of the right solution to actually run what you need to do.
Great. Yeah. So to give everybody context of the burden on your technical team, it's, in my opinion, pretty limited. We're deploying all the infrastructure. IMS is getting the VDI environment up and running. From the perspective of your staff, Generally, maybe we have to get involved with our two teams and set up some networking to make sure your team can access the environment from anywhere. We'll need, your team to give us access to Active Directory, however we're going to do that. And then from there, we would need you to provide more of what we call a golden image, which is what is your base operating system? And that could be on us too. You could say, hey, Webair IMS, please just give us a Windows 10 template. It doesn't have anything on it, or just install Microsoft Office, whatever that looks like. We can do that, and that's our golden image. But if you need, certain applications installed, and how we do that is we basically give you a machine where you can remote desktop into. Your IT team remote desktop into the golden image. It feels just like Windows would on a regular computer, and they can install any application under the sun that they need, anything that's custom to your organization, any bookmarks you need, and then we deploy that to all the virtual desktops. And we can do that daily, weekly, monthly. If your IT team says, hey, Webair IMS, we need to install this application, we need all users to have it by Monday. We essentially expose what we call the golden image to you. You RDP into it, you install that, and next thing you know, we push that out to all the desktops. And by Monday morning, everybody has that application that you needed or the bookmark that you need added. And Adam, please correct me if I'm wrong or if I didn't explain that well enough. If you have any context.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, absolutely. I mean, one of the big key things. I mean, I can just talk about other clients that we manage, and it effectively is a fully managed service. Okay, and that's really what we're offering here today. But ultimately, what it's about is, many customers generally go on a weekly cycle for updates. Because there's always patching and various other things of apps and different things that has to happen. So it's normally a window we get with an organization, a weekly basis. I mean, that can be, as I say, changed, but obviously that's the normal kind of rule of thumb. But as Michael says, the great thing about this type of thing is it basically populates the whole environment within minutes. So it's extremely quick to make any changes.
And protecting data, to give you a color on that, Webair it's really the responsibility for the data protection. We will be backing up the golden image, the desktops, your file server, whatever you need. We're taking full ownership of that. We could also go down to more of the OS level management if you're looking for Webair to be patching all the systems, if we're looking to deploy some data security on there to make sure malware isn't getting infected on any of these machines. So whatever that requirement is, Webair and IMS can definitely help take care of that for you. So what about power users, Adam? That's one thing that's interesting, right? I'm a construction organization. My team is on AutoCAD every single day. How are you going to make that desktop work? I mean, from my perspective, GPUs, these things, AutoCAD needs probably 16 gigs of memory. If I need a laptop, it's probably crazy. How do we solve for those power users?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you asked, because obviously that's what we do. I mean, obviously this is a proportion of the market out there, right? But obviously it's a really interesting space. If you talk about architects, engineering companies, construction, manufacturing, all these types of organizations they've been used to, workstations under the desk for years, 30, 40 years almost. So, they've got now the opportunity, particularly, and it's really based around one company that have created this. I have to tip my hat to them, which is NVIDIA, creating very powerful graphics cards that fit in servers that can be partitioned by using vGPU technology, virtual GPU technology, where we can now deliver 4 gig, 5, 6 gig, 8 gig memory, graphical memory to a VDI. So apart from having good processors and RAM and all the things you need to make a desktop work, you can now have the graphical elements, which now opens up the whole of those industries I mentioned. So yeah, really, really clever stuff, and it's our bread and butter really. But we've got a lot of experience in it, and it's quite it's more complex, I'd have to say. But the sort of planning is more in depth. But for sure, the technology is now to deliver a great experience.
Now, does somebody need to have a really beefy computer, Adam, if they're that power user? Do they still need a really crazy GPU in that laptop, or generally they can just be using the commodity laptop and not a
Yeah,
problem.
I mean, it's same rules apply as we presented earlier, or spoke about earlier, about centralizing the processing power in the data center or in the central server pool. So obviously, all that's transmitted to the endpoint is, the kind of normal sort of pixel changes and keystrokes and the basic stuff, and all the processing is done on the server. So, there is no need for a powerful endpoint. You need some sort of power there, but obviously this is what's great about it. I mean, I can run AutoCAD on my iPhone, and I can run it on my iPad, even though it's a Windows application. So, there's all these kind of funky stuff you can do. So, ultimately, you've got to remember, in that space, with these designers and engineers, it's been, it's a massive benefit for them, because obviously, to run on a normal kind of RDP Windows environment with high-end graphics is a struggle. So
Yeah,
really, it's VMware. VMware can deliver that, and obviously Citrix as well.
it's going to be interesting seeing people from their iPad running AutoCADs, but really
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So, just a little numbers about VDI. VDI can reduce your administrative costs up to 70%. So if you're looking at your IT team and they're strapped, you look at IT teams and internal organizations, they handle a lot. They are your desktop, your VDI, your help desk, your internal infrastructure managers. I mean, you name it. These IT teams just don't have the time. So thinking about going to a VDI solution, think about the cost of just your time back from that team. Maybe it's, hey, let's not hire that one more team member, because if we can offload our desktop solutions to Webair IMSCAD, we then can have our IT focus on other things, security, whatever you're looking for in your organization. Take that off your shoulders. 70% of businesses see an increase in productivity working remotely. I mean, the numbers are there, right? And the data is fairly new. I think the data for remote work is fresh, right? We've started this a few years ago, where companies started going a little bit more remote, but now that time has gone on, and of course, COVID, we were all pushed remote. So I don't know about that number yet, that 70% of businesses seeing productivity and working remotely, but we'll see as time goes on if that number drops a little bit. 20% of organizations already use VDI. VDI adoption is expected of a CAGR of 16.5%. So if you're not too familiar with CAGRs, that's just growth trends over a certain projected time. So by 2023, VDI adoption is going to be about 16% more than it is today. And a majority of the growth is small to medium businesses. Small to medium businesses, you're growing, you're trying to figure things out. And if you're deploying these laptops for every single employee, and they get hired and then they're terminated, and then you have to redeploy a new one, it takes time. And so if you think about what VDI can do for your organization, I think the numbers talk for themselves. So Webair IMS, just a little bit more about ourselves. We are located, at least Webair is located in 8 different global regions. We're in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Montreal, United Kingdom, France, Singapore, and Amsterdam. We can also do things on top of public cloud. We offer VDI desktop solutions, as Adam had mentioned, in a plethora of different solutions, depending on what is best for your organization. So why hosted VDI? Hosted VDI is definitely a different alternative to on-prem. You put this infrastructure on-premise, you then are responsible for all the hardware, all the equipment. If it fails, renewing, refreshing, the switches, the SAN, the firewalls, let's just go down that stack. You have to take care of all of it. Hosted VDI takes all of that ownership away from you. You could save your team's time with not having to worry about any of, again, the infrastructure components, deploying this infrastructure. You simply need to add a new application. The other thing is, when I said before, we expose that VDI image to you, we have no problem taking care of that for you either. If you say, hey, Webair IMS, can you make sure that on Monday everybody has, let's just say, Microsoft Teams installed on their desktop? Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can handle that too, right? We can log into the desktop. Yeah. We can do that for them. I'm sure there's different scenarios, if you wouldn't mind going into, where we might not be able to do that for them, but traditionally we can do that, right?
Everything's possible, Michael. It's not, it's just about communication, really. I mean, we can do anything. As I said earlier, it's a managed service, really. I mean, that's what it's way you should look at it. and you know, you can give us as much or as little as you want. But I think, you know, I think the only thing I would say that we don't do necessarily is first line support. Ideally, we can do it, but obviously, normally customers prefer to just take that first call anyway if there was an issue. But nonetheless, I think, you know, overall, and as far as the infrastructure and what apps and how your system's running, I mean, that is really, you know, bread and butter. Really, we could do things very quickly.
Right. Yeah, and thinking about the overhead, going back to it, you know, one system to patch, you have that one golden image, or maybe you have two golden images, right? You might have, you know, as we mentioned before, you have your standard users, and maybe you have those AutoCAD users. You know, you probably don't want AutoCAD installed on a computer that somebody doesn't use AutoCAD, right? And so we can have two different images. But if we think about it, how easy it is we need to run Windows patches because Windows came out with a vulnerability. We patch that one golden image and we push that out to all the desktops. Now all the desktops are patched. You don't need to worry about updating everybody's individual laptop. Limit the risk of malware, malicious activity. You know, keep in mind these laptops could be what we call persistent desktops or non-persistent. And what that means is essentially we can wipe them every single morning. You know, and Adam, if you wouldn't mind going into the differences between the two, but every single morning that person come in, and if they put something on their desktop, it's gone. And that's a good reason. There's a good reason for those things, is because if they downloaded a file or something that was malicious, you know, you can just make sure that when they come in the morning, that file's gone, and the only way they can store stuff is on their file share or similar. So Adam, would you mind just harping a little bit on non-persistent versus persistent?
Yeah, I think again, it's really choice of the customer. I mean, I would say, yeah, I mean, it really depends on what you want to, how you want to do it. But effectively, all the data in the desktop, the use of the files that they need to access is all centralized in the data center. So, you know, nothing is on the local machine, meaning nothing is on the desktop that can be taken off. You can even set, you know, so many different sort of security settings you can set there where they can't really take anything off a memory stick and all that sort of thing. You know, different things parameters you can set up. And again, it's all down to really the end user's requirements, really. But it can get very tight. We can lock it down quite a lot. But I think there's always a middle ground there with users, and you've got to trust them a little bit. So yeah, it depends on what you want to do.
Excellent. So, you know, give you context on how it works. It's one bill. It's pretty simple. You essentially pay for the infrastructure. You don't need to worry about anything else. You know, you get your bill. We size it and spec it out to your exact specifications. We know you're going to have 200 users. We know how many hypervisors you need. We know how much storage you need, and we identify that all pre-sales, and we wrap it up in a nice package and say, this is what your bill is going to be. You know, the licensing, the Windows licensing, you can also bring your own Windows licensing. There's a lot of flexibility with the options, whatever makes sense, but everything is just one bill. It's not a usage base. It's not, you don't need to worry about if one of your users, you know, peg the CPU at 100%. If you're looking at the public clouds of the world, you know, they're going to send you an erroneous bill for a couple $1,000 saying, hey, you know, this CPU on this server was at 100% for 30 days. So here's a nice $5,000 bill. Your resources are allocated to you. They are there for you to use. You do not need to worry about any usage based or anything like that unless you're using more storage. But those things will all be communicated to you from Webair on, hey, there's going to be more storage. You added 5 more users. But fortunately, you know, you can go to your CFO and your management team and say, this is how much VDI is going to cost us. $4,000, $5,000 a month, whatever that number is, and don't have to worry about, you know, any ambiguous bills that might come out of anywhere.
I think also as well, Michael, just to add to that, I think you know, as opposed to doing it with Azure or in the public cloud, let's say, you know, there is a lot of gotchas in the public cloud as far as billing, and I think, you know, what we see with customers that look at how it works. You know, you've got to be right on the management of any public cloud deployment because costs can escalate quite significantly. And I think the beauty of this type of solution is it is a guaranteed, you know, amount each month rather than there's any kind of extras that get you.
Excellent. Thanks for that color, Adam. just some key markets that both of us specialize in: manufacturing, public sector, automotive, financial, insurance, government. So we see different workloads all over the place. Webair has been around for 20 years, as Adam mentioned. IMS has been around for 10 plus years. We've seen it all. We've dealt with different environments. We've dealt with power users. We've dealt with standard users. We've done it all. So if you're thinking about, is this the provider for me? My confidence level, we can handle just about any organization, any size, mid-market, enterprise, does not matter your regulations. We can provide for it. So just something to keep in mind. We have that experience.
Sorry, I think it's really important to say that and this is why it's good to partner, because I think as and I know, we don't have data centers, so we can't do what you guys do. But you guys, don't have the experience in VDI and the actual deployment and support of customers, users, desktops. So this is why it works so well. And I think companies that say they could do it all, I'd be wary of, because I think that just you sort of jack of all trades, masters of none.
It's not possible, right, Adam? And that's why we decided years ago to partner together.
That's right.
You're right. We probably could have, but I always look at the battle scars, and I'm sure you can relate on what you've learned over the years. When you start a company or you start a new service, it is not as cut and dry as it might sound. So you deploy VDI, but the standards and the SOPs around it takes years of falling on your face, let's say it, to really learn. And that's where I think our partnership, which I know we both agree makes sense, is we're really specialized in the cloud infrastructure and how to manage that and how to respond to alerts and issues. And we don't know the exact way to deploy the VMware Horizon or Citrix environment on top of VMware and get all that glue to work together. And that's why the partnership makes sense, because at the end of the day,
also I think that just to give you a feel for in our business, obviously, is probably 20 to 30% of our revenue is actually achieved by troubleshooting bad deployments. What I mean bad deployments, deployments that aren't delivering what the customer wanted, right? So that is quite a shocking stat, really, in some ways, but also understandable, because if you put anything else that isn't like, say, normal in an environment, an application or whatever that's a little bit heavier in use, you really have to rethink about what you're doing and what you're offering your end users. So, and it all gets back to that, giving that end user the best experience possible.
Exactly. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So, desktop 101, we've harped on a lot of this already, so I'm not going to go too deep into this slide. Outside of just VDI and desktop security and the fully managed service and what it all means and the difference between private and public cloud, we've talked about that. Bring your own license, we've talked about that. The value of these solutions come full circle, and we can do a majority of different options for each customer. We also provide disaster recovery for VDI. So if you have a VDI environment today, we can do the disaster recovery for it and be the second data center that if your VDI environment goes down, we can bring that up in one of our data centers. So that's just another solution we offer. Adam, you talked about graphics. Anything else to harp on the graphics side?
Not really. I think as I say, it's even Windows 10 benefits from graphics, right? So Windows 10 does need a graphical element. So obviously whether you want to buy a NVIDIA card to do that is another matter. But the better the graphical output you get from a Windows 10, the real because even just with PowerPoint these days, as we're doing, it uses graphics, all the time. So everything, more and more things are graphics is being required, more and more applications. So it's just something to bear in mind even if you're not an engineer, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you remember, 20 years ago, you get that, you have a computer and you get that graphics card with 512 megabytes of memory, and you thought that was the most amazing graphics card you can get. Now, oh man, what are they up to? 24 gig, 36 gig cards. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. Totally.
So desktop without graphics, right? Windows 10. We mentioned VDI. We talked about desktop shared. How we can split resources. You can also pick and choose that. You can put people into different buckets and groups that, if these people maybe use Microsoft Word and this group of people in the organization only use, Internet Explorer, whatever that application is. Maybe they need less CPU and memory. So we can shift the resources around depending on your workloads. It's really agile in that sense. We can move people into different buckets. So if we notice that this one employee is a little bit more of a power user, we can switch their bucket, and now their VM will always boot with 4 CPUs and 8 gigabytes of memory, and we can shift them and move them, and it's really agile in that sense. And we have some customers that are getting, let's call it a little bit more bang for their buck on how many users they can fit on the VDI environments. Because remember, at the end of the day, what we're providing you as Webair is infrastructure. So those are VMware private cloud hosts dedicated to you. And if you have less power users, then maybe we don't need as much compute as we would normally need for somebody else. So we can shift resources around. There's just so many options around just general desktops without the graphics. Software stack, Adam, would you mind just going into this? Like what do you support outside of just VMware Citrix? Is there anything else that, there's options for people?
Yeah, I mean, the two, the two, when you're doing this type of solution, it's VMware or Citrix really. Normally it'd be a VMware hypervisor, ESXi, but to be honest, there is other options, but really it is the market leading one, and we tend to go with that. And then you may choose to have a Citrix desktop on top of that, potentially, if you're doing certain things. But obviously Horizon, of course, is a VMware product, Horizon View. So, right through, there is plenty of options, and this is where, as an end user, sometimes it's good to have a chat about this with, let's say, people more in the know, let's say, around how this puts together, because I think, sometimes it can get a little bit confusing as to what really is the best solution for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about from an operating system perspective? Windows 7, 10, server, Linux, really, any OS could be a bootable OS, right?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, absolutely. I mean, most people Windows 10, right, these days, but there's still a few lagging behind, but there's not a problem. I mean, I think if you're looking to do any kind of OS upgrade, I mean, it's a great time to actually do this sort of thing, make the move. That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's generally a Windows Server, Windows 10, setup.
And Adam, one thing that, it's funny, never really came up, nobody's really asked. What about Mac operating systems? Are there any options to do that in the cloud?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, I would say the good thing about Macs is that they do work. I mean, you can put like a Citrix or VMware client on a Mac, and then it'll work running on a Windows environment. But obviously, it won't run natively. But obviously, you can get it to work, and you can run obviously Windows-based apps, because obviously most apps are Windows-based, or even Linux-based, on a Mac. So there are tools to do that. So yeah, don't discard it if you've got a Mac environment. And but yeah, I mean, absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're experiencing all that anyway as well, so it's not a problem.
Great. So, just a little color around options. Everything is sized, how we manage. We can give different types of storage. It could be SSD, SSD SAN. It could be hybrid SAN. There's a ton of different options that we have available for users depending on your environment. Traditionally, most organizations are using SAN storage. So our private clouds are generally a private cloud with SAN storage behind it, but plethora of different options depending on your use cases. Network performance, Webair in all of our data centers, everything is 10 gigabits, fiber, both to the SAN, the storage, the network, you layer 3, layer 2, you name it, we take care of it. So, speed and performance will not be a problem for what your users are looking for. Requirements, it's pretty simple from a standpoint of anything for the most part can be installed on these desktops. Very little limitations of any. Adam, have you ever run into any limitations with any specific requirements that just couldn't be met?
Yes, but I'm not going to go into it now. But no, it's pretty good. I mean, you're talking about silly applications. There are a few around that are pretty old, but obviously, generally, I've not come across anything that's a problem, recently. But I mean, I think the key thing really is all about the apps, right? So, well, it's all about the users. That's the first thing. But then the application mix and how that is going to be delivered. And I think, like all these things, you can talk about storage, so late in the day, and you can talk about processing speed and RAM or whatever it is, all the different sort of things. As an IT person, you want to know about that stuff, but the end user doesn't care, right? So the end user just wants it to work. You want a seamless delivery, and you don't want to be really bothered by it. So, I think, the point being is that, all this stuff's great in the background, but that's why our experience counts with Webair to deliver the right fit for you. And so it's as easy and as hassle-free as possible.
Yeah, I mean, through our partnership, fortunately, I haven't seen anything that we weren't able to do. So I would say probably 99% of the time we can find a solution. And there's that 1% that maybe somebody needs to upgrade an older application or figure out some different solution. But I think for the most part, we can come up with some answers. So with that said, I'd love to open it up to any questions. We went into why you should use Webair and IMS, and down below you will see our email addresses. You're welcome to email either of us if you have any questions, concerns. But I'd love to leave it open to any questions, which at this moment I don't believe we have any. And Adam, unless you have anything to wrap up, I think we're in good shape.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I think, as I say, it's just, it's all about, I think now, just you look at your enterprise. If you think that you've got the best, possible solution you have, then great. But if you haven't, if there's any areas where you think, you like a better experience or a better fit or some sort of improved environment, I think, don't look no further. Simple as that. And we're always happy just to have an obligation call and talk it through anytime.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. Well, I would like to thank all of our attendees today for joining. Again, if you have any questions, we are open at 24/7. So send either of us an email and we will get back to you, and our teams will set up a call. And again, I thank you for joining, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Michael. Nice to talk to you. Bye. Bye, everybody.